Okay, we're live.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our City of Buffalo Finance Committee meeting. And we're going to get started with roll call.
Committee on Finance, 14th of July, 2020. Councilmember Wyatt.
Here.
Councilmember Bowman.
Here.
Councilmember Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera.
Present.
Councilmember Wingo.
Present.
Council President Pridgen.
Here.
Councilmember Scanlon.
Present.
Quorum is present.
All right, from the top. From the top.
Mr. Chairman, motion to take item 10 from the table out of order.
Motion to take item 10 out of order, seconded by Councilmember Scanlon.
Item number 10, Robe, letter to the Controller.
Okay, and this item is open, and we have as our guest, I think for the first time, I'm the Executive Director, Jeanette Robe from the BFSA. Thank you for coming on and joining us, Jeanette.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Yeah.
Very happy to be here.
We've had a number of conversations over the last couple of months regarding the city's finances, and our relationship with the BFSA hasn't always been the best, but I hope that we're on the right foot going forward because we really need your expertise. And I think I was at your last meeting and I was able to convey that to you, how really important it is for us to have the best information and make the best decisions for the city of Buffalo. So that with that being said, I just want to again thank you and thank you for your involvement with us. I know that some of the council members may have some questions for you, but I'll just let you start with an opening statement, and then we'll open it up for any council members with any questions.
Thank you very much. I just want to again thank you for the invitation to meet with the Finance Committee today. The city is facing, I know we use the word unprecedented a lot, but it really is the appropriate word, financial circumstances. And we are here not just to meet our chartered responsibility, which is to help the city achieve and maintain fiscal stability, but also work with the city, including the council, the mayor's office, and the controller's office, in doing what we can to provide assistance all the time, not just through this pandemic, but all the time as well. So I look forward to a collaborative working relationship with the council, and thank you again for having us here.
Thank you again, council members. Anyone any questions? Councilmember Wingo.
Yes, good morning, Jeanette.
Good morning.
It is good to see you here. Clearly, there's been somewhat of an perceived strained relationship. Can you please elaborate or explain exactly what BFSA's role is? We know what your responsibilities are, but what is your role and how do you engage with the City of Buffalo and the Common Council to achieve the role of the BFSA?
Well, the role of the BFSA, of course, is to, the ultimate mission is for the city's achievement and maintenance of fiscal stability. So in order to do that, we monitor the city's finances. We are in an advisory role, as you're well aware. Under an advisory role, what we are required to do is we review all collective bargaining agreements for not only the city, but also the covered organizations, which include the school district, the Buffalo Urban Renewal Agency, and the Buffalo Municipal Housing Authority. We also review the quarterly reports that are issued by each entity, and we are required to certify the revenues as set forth in the budget and the financial plan by the City of Buffalo and covered organizations. So it's a little bit of a difference between a control period, where under a control period, the board was required to actually approve the labor contracts, approve the financial plan. But under an advisory period, just like the name says, we really provide advice to the city through various reports, and our reports are distributed to council, the controller, the mayor. We hold various public meetings and report accordingly. So our efforts are to have an open forum, open discussion with the administration. We work very well together. And I hope that answers your question broadly in terms of what we do.
Yeah, pretty broad. Yeah, and I appreciate you trying to, elucidate on what the responsibilities and roles are. Now, can you just please express what you believe your relationship with the Common Council should be?
Our relationship with Common Council really is, from a standpoint, my standpoint, is advisory in nature. So as we are reviewing these various items that I just went through, and we're issuing reports, we provide our recommendations and our comments to the appropriate individuals to review, assess, and consider. So we would submit those to council.
Anything else, council member?
No.
Okay. Council members, anyone?
Thank you, Jeanette. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome.
Majority Leader Rivera, you're on mute.
I'm sorry. Just kind of a summary. I know we just approved a budget for this fiscal year, and I know there was some concerns from the control board regarding borrowing. And can you elaborate on the concern that the control board had with regards to the city borrowing at that point? Was there a sense that we should have done something other than just borrow?
Are you referring to the recent deficit note?
That's correct.
Okay, no, there were no concerns. The BFSA was supportive of the deficit note being issued. We understand that the city was facing difficult year-end financial circumstances, and to maintain the liquidity and the cash flow for the organization, we were supportive of it. The letters that you might be referring to was an analysis that the city controller's office had requested us to do to see what the differential in cost would be if we were to issue, as opposed to the city of Buffalo. We have an enhanced credit rating just through the basic state intercept provision that we have of sales tax. So with that enhanced rating, we can borrow for less cost, lower interest rate. Depending on where the municipal market is at the time, that could be considerable, that could be not considerable. So we tend to do this analysis during borrowings.
Okay, so the analysis was on the deficit borrowing. With regards to the budget that we approved, the 2020-2021 budget, there were concerns that the control board had. Would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I can comment on those. It's complicated. There are some, I don't know if I would classify it as concerns. It's understanding that we're in a period of flux, a lot of unknowns. We don't know what's happening with the federal stimulus. I think we all probably thought we would have a sense of where that would be at this point back in May when we were facing this, and we don't have that yet. We can't, as a board, I'm speaking on behalf of the board, of course, but the board was not able to declare the financial plan and the budget to be balanced or compliant with the BFSA Act, specifically because there were uncertain, unproven revenues included within that. Those being specifically the federal stimulus money of $65+ million included. We recommended that the tribal state compact revenue not be included in the budget. Reason for that, although the arbitration award has been in favor of the state, state has not pursued enforcing of that arbitration award. And we're not clear when or if or when the state will enforce it. So it's more from a contingency standpoint to exclude those types of revenues and plan accordingly. The mayor responded with a contingency plan or an alternate spending plan. It was dated May 22nd, I want to say, that kind of provided broad guidelines how the gap would be addressed, certain approaches that would be considered to be taken if the federal stimulus and the tribal state compact revenue didn't come in as to the level or to the extent that was included in the budget. So those were the primary concerns that our board has. Now, we did have a final submission of the financial plan and the budget, and our board will be making final recommendations soon. We're looking at scheduling a special meeting possibly early next week to do that.
Okay, so when you had concerns regarding both the stimulus and the compact, when you have concerns like that, do you also offer recommendations?
We did offer recommendations, yes. Our recommendations were that a revised financial plan and budget be developed. And then the steps within that revised financial plan were to eliminate the federal stimulus dollars, eliminate the tribal state compact, to include a likely, in recognition that you can't cut your way to balance, including a deficit borrowing within the financial plan with a intent to request special legislation to have a deficit bond approved, which currently isn't allowed. A note is, but a bond isn't. And then there were various revenue sources that we recommended close monitoring of, including school zone cameras, primarily. What was the big one? The violation fees associated with that, is that's, well, there's a lot of questions on what the school year is going to look like, and that's a fairly significant revenue. So and then one of the likewise considerations were we had recommended this occur, back in the June timeframe before the budget was set into place before the fiscal year, was to consider increasing the real property tax levy in consideration of the problems that were going to be financial problems down the road.
Okay, so you mentioned that the recommendation wasn't just to cut our way, just to cut, but there had to be other alternatives as well, such as the tax levy and some deficit borrow, but that we just couldn't cut our way through the budget to balance it. And I agree with that. We just can't. I think it's a combination of a number of things, and hopefully in the near future we'll be discussing sort of how do we breach, or how do we deal with the shortfall that we have in the budget going forward. So I think it's a matter of us sitting down, and I think the process is going to begin shortly as to how we begin to resolve this the matter of the shortfall. We're still hopeful that the stimulus money will be there, or some form of stimulus will come to the city that would alleviate many of the problems that we're experiencing right now. So thank you very much for your recommendation and your ideas.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, the council member. Jeanette, one question. Right now we're looking at a $96 million deficit, pretty much. 65 million that we were expecting to get some type of funding from the federal government. 11 million was the compact with the Senecas, tribal compact, and 20 million from the holdback from the state regarding the AIM money. If you were in our situation, let's say you were, what would your approach be in this situation? How would you address this? Because I know that there was a document provided to you all that we will be taking a $52 million loan or no bond. That doesn't seem like it's something that's actually feasible, is it?
Well, I just want to be sure I'm clear on the fact that a deficit bond isn't allowed yet, that you do need special legislation for that. And there's some dialogue out there as to whether or not the state is amenable to passing that kind of legislation. There's some public discussion, debate going on back and forth between New York City's mayor and the governor as to the viability of doing that. So that's something that we're certainly monitoring, and likely we'll put in our own request for some type of special legislation. But I think it's it's a difficult position for all of us to be in. I think the mayor's approach was I think it was the right approach. We're at a point where we don't.
I think she's frozen.
A clear understanding. We fully support the mayor's budget approach to that. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. As far as the council's approach, I think just working collaboratively with the controller's office, the mayor's office, us, and working through the issues as they unfold. There's no clear path in how to address this type of situation. It hasn't been seen before. I think as long as we keep the communication open and we're all discussing things together, we'll figure out the best approach.
Okay. Any other questions, council members? I just have one final one for you. If we were to go to a hard control board right now, what would your approach be to address it, to address our problem right now, if you were to go to a hard control board?
Well, under a hard control board, our powers are quite limited. There has not been a desire by my board to move into a control period. And that is because even under a control period, we cannot effectuate revenues. What we can do is we could implement a wage freeze. We could implement a hiring freeze. That's probably the one area where we could effectuate change that the city would not be able to. But ultimately, that's why the board has not had a desire to move into a control period, because really this needs to be a collaborative collaborative approach towards getting out of the hole that we're kind of facing and not imposing control board's will. Our board is very aware that they are not the elected officials, that the elected officials should be setting policy and running the operations of the city, and are 100% supportive of that.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. I could go on and on with you, but we'll definitely have you back again as we continue to go through this year and deal with the unprecedented challenges of our finances for the city. So thank you again for being with us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Next item.
From the top?
From the top.
Item number 1, approval to purchase new police vehicles.
Items open.
Okay, this item is open, and we have who from the police department? Is that the commissioner?
Yes. Joined by Captain Ronaldo, sir.
Ronaldo and John Stanchek.
Okay. I know that these items came before us without any documentation the first time, and so we had to send them to committee to have you bring forth the information properly. So if we can in the future make certain that the documents that we need are forward, I certainly would appreciate it. The first item is approval of police cars. I know we had a conversation several months ago, and we were talking about leasing vehicles, but this is an outright purchase, correct? Okay.
Yes. Yes.
What happened to the strategy of leasing?
Jeff?
I can answer that. This is for the purchase of unmarked vehicles. We get a lot of longevity out of our unmarked vehicles. We're able to hang on to them upwards of 7, 8, 9, 10 years sometimes in certain circumstances. So from a leasing standpoint, the turnover of those vehicles wouldn't be necessary. So because this was geared towards unmarked, it's in our better financial interest to purchase these vehicles outright versus leasing these.
Okay, the problems that you were having as far as vehicles, were those more pertaining to the patrol officers, or were they similar to these vehicles, unmarked vehicles as well?
It's a little bit of both. In our unmarked fleet, we have even 2008, 2009 Crown Victorias that were patrol vehicles that have been repainted and are still serving as detective division cars. So both sides of our fleet are equally important. We get more longevity out of the unmarked fleet than we do the marked fleet, but we have a shortage as well in both the marked as well as the unmarked fleet.
So are you saying that this is a dire need right now, that we need to purchase these vehicles because you know our financial situation, right?
Well aware of it, but yes, the detective division is in need of vehicles. Their fleet hasn't been updated in over 5 years, so we absolutely do need these cars.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions?
Are the
Councilmember Rivera?
Are these vehicles, are any of these vehicles take-home vehicles?
The unmarked vehicles, there are certain people within the department that have take-home vehicles. The average detectives, investigators do not have take-home vehicles.
I have a question regarding take-home vehicles. When we allocate these new take-home vehicles, are they assigned to administrative or are they assigned to the line staff? I'm just wondering if these new take-home vehicles are for people to take home outside to the suburbs and to their homes versus the detectives that are working. I just try to figure out if the take-home vehicles are for use of investigations versus transporting people to and from their houses to the suburbs. I'm just curious.
Well, the take-home vehicles are assigned to, for instance, the exempt. So the chiefs, the commissioner, and the deputy commissioners. In terms of the line officers, there are take-home vehicles assigned to certain detectives, depending on their assignments. So our crime scene unit people, photography, these are people that are on call 24/7. Our specialized unit commanders get take-home vehicles. And then a number of detectives assigned to our federal partner task force get take-home vehicles. Generally, to get the most longevity out of unmarked cars is brand new purchased unmarked cars become take-home cars. We've seen through in the past that people that have a take-home car take, lack of a better word, better care of it. They get more longevity out of those vehicles. So as new ones are purchased, their existing take-home fleet is then rotated into the detective division. Last time we purchased take-home vehicles was with the Dodge Chargers, and I believe, John, that was in 2017.
Yeah, I think it was
16. Actually, I believe it was 2016. So that's the way we get the most longevity, is stepping the cars down through the department.
And I know this is contractual, where once we allow people to take vehicles home, it becomes kind of a precedent and it's hard to take back. Is there any way of limiting or minimizing the number of take-home vehicles, even if it's contractual? It's hard for me to understand people taking vehicles to their homes. I can understand if they're responding to a call within the city and they have to get there quickly from their homes to a crime scene, but unmarked vehicles just to take out there and they're not responding to a crime scene, to me is kind of, that contributes to the wear and tear on the vehicles, the mileage, and at some point the need to do exactly what we're doing today is allocating more resources to take vehicles back to the suburbs or to wherever they're at that don't respond to urgent calls, whether they're homicides, whether they're arsons. I'm referring to the line officers that are actually responding to a scene of a crime because they need to respond directly to the scene from their house. So, I mean, I don't know if it's contractual or what, but I think this would minimize the cost to the city in terms of repairs and maintenance and purchasing if we can find ways to limit the number of take-home vehicles. We talked to the fire department. They don't have this problem. We talked to them last week, and they don't have the contractual problem perhaps that the city has. But I don't know how to work around this, and perhaps this is something that can be handled through negotiations because the cost to the city at this time to continue to pay out for these vehicles to take home for people that aren't responding to calls. I mean, to me, I have a problem with that. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, Council President Pridgen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On that note, the persons who have the take-home vehicles, what would be the, how is it decided who take home vehicles, I guess?
Some of those vehicles, like for example, the inspectors, that was something that years ago was an arbitrator rule that inspectors are to be given a take-home vehicle. Also with some of the units, we did at one time challenge that, and we lost the grievance. So as of right now, it would probably be something that would have to be negotiated in contract, and of course, I can come up from up under that.
And the reason that we lost the grievance, what, if you can remember, what was the reason that the arbitrator said that they had to take those vehicles home or should be allowed?
It was past practice, and it was a lot of times they go into past practice.
So, oh, because of past practice. So how do, and I don't know if you know this answer, how do you end that past practice? Do we have to do it in the present contract that's coming up, or does that just go on into infinity?
That would probably go on. You would probably have to negotiate it. Like I said earlier, we tried to come from up under it, and a grievance was filed, and we lost the grievance.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any other colleagues?
If I could chime in briefly.
Okay, Jeff, and then I'll come to you, and Councilmember Nowakowski.
Okay, the grievance was specific at the time. So in other words, the car comes with the position, not necessarily the person, if that makes sense. So some positions require, as part of the position, the car is seen as a requirement for that position. But with the exemption, or with the exception of the upper command staff, the chiefs and above, most of the take-home cars that are assigned to the detective division are because of their 24/7 response to calls. They're to units like internal affairs that are on call 24/7. Other than federal task force positions, there's really no positions where somebody has a car just because they want a car. It's based on a response need from an investigative nature that those positions have a take-home vehicle.
Councilmember Nowakowski.
Yes, just two questions. How many vehicles are being purchased, and what's the longevity per car?
Again, on the unmarked fleet, our longevity is very good. It can go anywhere between 6 to 10 years, taking out, of course, collisions, things of that nature. We have $350,000 in the budget. What we are in the process of looking to do is what's called a mini bid. So trying to get the best bang for our dollar, we are looking at, instead of purchasing like a Ford Explorer as a unmarked vehicle, which average about $40,000 each, we're looking to see what the costs are currently of the Dodge Chargers, as well as we're even looking at a Chevy Equinox. I know if I walk into Paddock Chevrolet, a Chevy Equinox can run about $27,000, $28,000. So depending on the mini bid results, we're hoping to get the most number of vehicles within the same dollar price, but we won't know that until the mini bid results are returned.
Okay. Do these vehicles come outfitted with the police package, or is that an additional cost?
It's an additional cost for the unmarked vehicles. It's a lot less expensive than a marked vehicle, obviously. In an unmarked vehicle, it's simply a couple emergency lights and a siren and PA system, where obviously in a marked car, you have light bars, cages, and all kinds of electronic equipment that we don't need in the unmarked cars. Even if we attempt to save money, we're not even going to put police radios in the unmarked cars, because every member of the department is issued a portable radio. So that's a savings of about $1,500 a car right there.
So is that included in the $350,000?
Correct. Within the $350,000, we have to purchase not only the vehicles, but the upfitting as well. So that's why the more money we can save on the cost of the vehicle, the upfitting is, for the most part, somewhere between $2,000 to $4,000 a car, unless you purchase a car that needs additional lighting. In times, we have added additional lighting depending on the assignment and what the person would be utilizing the vehicle for.
That entire cost, any additional cost, will be in this $350,000.
Correct. If the upfitting cost comes back too high, then generally we, instead of buying 12 cars, we buy 11 cars, something like that.
Any other questions, colleagues?
Council member.
Okay, Councilmember Wingo.
Jeff, real quick, Captain Ronaldo, do you have any data that would help us to know when these officers respond to calls and how many calls they actually respond to, being that we do have a concern with these vehicles going home? I would like to see, let's say we save some money with some Chevy Equinox all-wheel drive. That way they can make it to where we need to make it to in the wintertime. Winters have been pretty mild lately, but still, do we have any data that would help us to make that determination about how many calls they respond to, what time they respond to these calls, since they're not urgent calls, since they are on 24/7? By the time they get there, things are still pretty calm. They're not responding like SWAT would respond, so to speak. So what does the data say?
It's not something that we currently track. We don't have somebody fill out a form every time they respond. I mean, if you look at the evidence unit, they're responding probably well over 10,000 times a year to call outs that are 24/7, 7 days a week. Our photo unit, same thing. Our SWAT team, HMT, URT, they have equipment that they're carrying with them in the vehicles. Last year there was probably around 50 or 60 SWAT call outs. There was probably 20 URT call outs. There was probably, I think my team had over 20 CMT call outs. So it varies depending on the assignment, but to give you an exact breakdown that this vehicle was assigned to this person who had to come in after hours many times, it's not something that we track.
Okay, Councilmember Wingo?
I'm good.
Okay, Majority Leader Rivera?
Going back to Councilmember Wingo's line of questioning, do you track the mileage that these take-home vehicles have during the course of the week, during the course of the day? And do you also track the gas that's utilized going back and forth? Because that would be interesting. I mean, you have a take-home card, and I'd like to know where the mileage is, how much mileage they're putting on the vehicles, how much gas are they utilizing? Because we're also providing fuel for them as well. Is that correct?
It is correct. All of the mileage fuel costs are tracked through the city's Fuel Master system. That data is automatically uploaded every time somebody gets gas in their vehicle. So those records, I believe Bill Sunderland is in charge of that program.
And how do you, when you say, I know it's tracked, but what does the administrators do when they see an exorbitant amount of mileage, an exorbitant amount of fuel? Is there any time where something is flagged saying, hey, there's just a lot of mileage here? Because I guess they can use the vehicle for almost anything. Is that correct?
To a certain extent, that is correct. What we've seen in the past is, or what currently happens, I shouldn't say in the past, is when there is a uptick in whether it's mileage or fuel consumption, generally Bill Sunderland will send an email to Inspector Gents and say, you know, this vehicle number 123 is seeing a large uptick, and here's like a 30-day printout of what they're doing. And then internally, we can look into it to determine exactly, you know, what the mileage uptick is. As you know, residency is not required for police officers except for those hired under a specific contract. So there are people that have take-home vehicles assigned to them that do not live in the city, some that do live a somewhat considerable distance from the city. So their mileage is going to be different than somebody that lives and works in the same district that they're assigned. So we do tend to track that, but again, there have been times when there has been an uptick in the usage, and it's whether because, you know, it was a situation where we had a storm and that person was responding more often than not, or situations like that.
Okay, thank you.
Council President Pridgen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are the police cars, do they have any type of GPS tracking on the police cars, just regular police cars?
The marked cars do have a automatic vehicle locator program. The unmarked cars do not, because we do not put laptops and computers in the unmarked cars, which is required to run the AVL program.
And so those computers would about how much do they run? Because I think that a lot of these questions would be answered for your department if you're able to track a vehicle, especially if it's a take-home vehicle. What's the cost on that, approximately?
Well, if we were to put an actual MCT, mobile computer terminal setup, like what's in the marked cars in the unmarked car, you're looking at about an additional $6,000 expense per vehicle for that particular program.
So I know that there are less expensive programs because I've used them in my with the other hat that I wear to track some of our vehicles, our vans, that kind of stuff, so that when people are out picking up people, if there's a delay, we know where they are. There are less expensive ways to track the vehicle other than the big setup front that we have in the police cars. Have we ever looked at that so that we know where these vehicles are?
I have not been asked to look at those programs in the past, so I don't have that information for you.
So I think that that's important because there's a lot of information that you wouldn't be able to track. I think that if we are tracking the regular police cars through a more expensive system that I don't think would be needed, you know, these systems, depending on which system you get, run fairly inexpensive when you talk about the possible cost savings if you had a person who, you know, is living so far out and then utilizing it on off time. Because they're take-home vehicles, for instance, in a day when an officer or inspector is off from work and does not have to respond, can they still utilize those vehicles, like to run to the grocery store and those type of things?
No, it's a take-home vehicle, and usually they should only have that vehicle if it's police-involved activity. To go to the store, what have you, no, that's not what the vehicle is supposed to be used for.
So if the tracking were on there and, for instance, a person had a day off and then we see that the vehicle is moving with the tracking, we're better able to kind of control the fleet, I believe. I don't have a formal resolution requesting this information, but I think that in our next conversation, especially when we talk about vehicles, I'd be very interested in knowing if we found another program in which all the vehicles could be tracked, especially the take-home vehicles. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. So the vehicles that we currently have no laptops in them. They have no type of electronic equipment in them. The ones that we're going to be replacing.
The unmarked cars, correct, do not have computers inside of them. They never have.
Okay. Motion is in. Oh.
Motion to approve.
Who had a question?
I do.
Councilmember Wingo.
So, you know, I was asking about the data because I wanted to know how the vehicles are being tracked as far as the usage of the vehicles when it relates to them responding to a police issue or a police call. You know, they don't respond to emergencies, so to speak, like you said earlier. But when these cars are parked at their home, and the point was brought up that this may be on their off days, and they have several off days. If this car is being used for personal use on their off day, that's an issue. And then the city is paying to put the gas in those vehicles. That is a gift of public funds, of which, of course, we don't do that. We don't gift fuel to police officers. We don't gift we don't just give them the car to drive to Niagara Falls or to drive to an amusement park. And how do we know unless we put some type of tracking unit in these vehicles so that we know? And then who on the police force is ensuring that the city isn't being overly generous by just allowing them to drive these cars 7 days a week when they only work 4 days a week? I mean, I don't mean to, you know, I'm not being malicious, but a lot of us are taking a lot of heat from our constituency regarding what is happening with the police department, especially with the funding of the police department and how we are spending dollars. And now we're talking about $350,000 that we're going to spend on some new vehicles that, you know, we don't know how they're necessarily gonna be used. And excuse me, but I'm not trying to be flippant. I'm not trying to be sarcastic, but what the hell?
Well, I hear what you, I understand what you're saying, council member. But as of right now, with the take-home vehicles, I mean, like I said, we did try to go after some of those take-home vehicles, and like I said earlier, we lost in the grievance. I did just mention that these vehicles are take-homes; they're not to be used for grocery shopping or going, you know, wherever. As far as tracking them, I don't have a mechanism right now for tracking them, but we're going to, you know, look into what the council president just asked us to look into, and we'll look into that.
Okay, well, that's fine. I appreciate the fact that they said you will look into it. I am not comfortable with purchasing vehicles that we don't have a plan to track them with. So before, Mr. Chair, and this is up to you, whatever motion you decide, but before we make a motion, can we have a commitment that we will absolutely look into ensuring that there's a system by which we can track the cars online, live, and in living color if we're going to be giving these vehicles to officers on the police department? I would like to know that we have that mechanism in place, even if it takes us a couple of months to get this system. Can we commit to finding a way so that we know where the vehicles are, so that I'm comfortable with approving this? Because if we, I know, I'll let you answer that now.
Okay, the vehicle, I know maybe last year, there was an officer involved in a accident out in Amherst with a vehicle. I don't know if it was an unmarked vehicle. Was it an unmarked vehicle? Do you recall? I think it was in the Wegmans parking lot or something.
Oh, yeah.
The police department, I'm asking. Do you recall?
Yes, it was a detective who had taken a car that he was not authorized to take home and was involved in an altercation. The officer subsequently was criminally charged and retired prior to facing the discipline for it. But there was a situation where the vehicle was not authorized as a take-home car.
Okay. So I know that we talked about you're going to have to outfit these with a limited amount of packaging, and you said that's going to be included in the $350,000. Can we ensure, as council members Wingo talked about and discussed, that there can be some monitoring equipment on that can be included in the 350, because I don't want to give an additional amount. I think that's appropriate. I think there has to be some accountability, because we are in dire straits. And for us to sit here and approve $350,000, I understand the police department is under stress with vehicles, got it. But we're under stress to maintain what we're doing right now and just simple services for ordinary residents. So I think that for us to be able to approve something like this would have to be something that what we're asking for, to be able to track it. Because to me, and it's unfortunate that the contract has us at this point, that we have to give someone a vehicle right now when the city is suffering, and we have to buy vehicles to give to someone to take to Amherst, Orchard Park, wherever. I just wouldn't, it wouldn't sit well with me at this point in time. Council President?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is my thought from our discussion today. Is this time sensitive in any way, Commissioner?
Yes.
Yes.
How time sensitive and why?
Yeah, the factories have been closed due to COVID. So unfortunately, the orders have been backed up. Our original order of marked police cars that was purchased last year is being delayed by anywhere from 3 to 4 months because of the factories having been shut down. So it's time sensitive in the fact that we would like to get the bid process completed and get an order placed as soon as possible, so that we're not delaying the amount of time that we're going without these vehicles. And we can stop paying for the rental of the vehicles we get to backfill our fleet with.
So it's not time sensitive in that a couple more weeks would jeopardize public safety.
Correct.
Okay, so I'd like to propose that this stay on the table, and that to give the police department the time to find a tracking system that would be recommended back with this contract or amended of what is being proposed here. Again, they're just not that expensive. And if it were included in this, and maybe we end up with one less car or a different type of scenario, I think that would be important. I think if we are tracking the patrol cars, we probably should be tracking these even more than the patrol cars that get checked in and checked out daily. But these that don't, and yeah, so that's what I'd like to recommend, is that this state remains on the table, and that we give you time to take a look at what other type of tracking that you can put on these vehicles.
Okay. Motion table.
Item number 2.
Need a second.
Seconded by Councilmember Wingo.
Item number 2, approval to renew contract with Axon Enterprise.
Okay, this item is open, and I just have a question right off the bat. This is a $415,000 contract, but when in reading the information, it said in addition to year 2 encompassing the same items for SWAT helmet cameras and additional docking stations that were added to the contract, those sorts of things that were added to the contract. Is this the contract that we approved 3 years ago for Axon for the cameras?
Correct.
Okay, and there was something additional added to that prior or after we approved that amount?
Correct. In order to outfit the SWAT team with body cameras, there was a different camera that we had to purchase specific to their assignment, okay, so that they could record their activities.
Did that come back to the Common Council?
Yeah. I don't know if it did or not. I thought it did. I don't have the answer for you.
Okay. Can we get documentation on that? Because if that did not come back to the Common Council, I think that was inappropriate. And I think that, again, we're trying to watch every nickel, and we have things being added before us that we have no idea that it's being added.
I'll have John look into that for you.
Okay, so then can we, any other questions, colleagues, on this? Can we send this without recommendation until we get the information? Majority Leader?
Motion to send without recommendation.
Seconded by Councilmember Bowman.
Item number 3, approval to renew contract with Deaf Access Services.
Items open.
Okay, we've been doing this for a number of years, the Deaf Access.
No, this is a contract that we just started last year to provide additional service to the officers in case they come across a victim or somebody who's hard of hearing or deaf. We just, Captain Beyer from the CIT unit got involved in that and got a contract done with them just so we have a service or mechanism for them to use. And so far, we put the contract that was just put in place in February.
Okay. Any questions, colleagues, on this? I would just like to change the amount to not exceed 3,000 because it said that this could be higher or lower. So if it's 3,000, let's say to not exceed instead of saying either higher or lower, because that's not appropriate language, I don't think. So if we can just change it to make certain it says not to exceed 3,000.
Okay.
So you'll resubmit that item so that we can have a substitution to approve this item?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. So Majority Leader, so we will.
There'll be a substitution?
Yes.
So what do you want us
so
to do?
Let's send it. So we send, clerk, should we send this without rec?
So, Chair of Finance, in regards to a substitution, being that this item was originally filed in this capacity, I will receive and file and have them submit the new item with the correct amount of what you're requesting.
Got you. Thank you. So we'll receive and file this one, they'll submit the other. Thank you.
Motion
Correct.
to receive and file.
Thank you. Seconded by Councilmember Nowakowski.
Item number 4, approval to renew contract with HealthWorks Western New York.
Items open.
Okay, this item is open, and I know that we've had a lot of conversation from folks in the community regarding testing of our officers. Is each officer tested every year?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, so every officer is tested every year, and we have documentation of their testing?
Correct. Yes.
What happens if an officer test is positive?
He's terminated.
He's terminated?
Terminated.
Okay, we have 700 officers, right?
Yes.
Have we terminated any officers because they tested positive?
Through the years, since I've been on, yes, it's been quite a few officers that's been terminated.
Okay. Okay, so you don't give them any other recourse, they just terminate it?
No, it's just if you test positive, then you terminate it.
Okay. What was the cost last year?
Yeah.
What we spent. I think last year's final number was about 30,000 we spent, maybe 35. I don't know the exact figure in front of me.
Okay, so why is it an increase to 50,000 this year?
This is just an estimate just to get the contract encumbered. Again, it depends on how many tests are actually performed or done.
Okay, I think we need to be clear on this. If we're testing 700 officers, then we should have a fixed number for 700 officers.
Some of us get tested twice, council member. Yeah, I get tested twice. My staff get tested twice. Narcotics get tested twice.
Okay. So
tested twice.
So Commissioner, can't we fix that in to the cost then? I mean, if you have officers that have to get tested twice, there's a fixed amount to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, the full number of tests that the commissioner mentioned are budgeted for. Just the initial amount of the contract, didn't grab all of the money, but if you want the full figure that we could potentially spend encumbered right now, we can do that.
Yeah, I want the clear number. I don't want to go with an estimate. I mean, I think there's a fixed cost. Is there an additional cost to testing if you go above and beyond? I mean, I think you have a fixed number of officers. You have a fixed number of leadership. I just think that cost should be fixed. It shouldn't be 50,000 when you paid 35,000 last year. I'm saying, what are they doing adding an additional 15,000 to this cost? So can we receive and file on this one? You give me what the actual cost should be, what the testing for the officers for who have to get tested twice and those things at least? Because this is $15,000 over. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So we can receive and file this item and then they'll send us the other?
Motion to receive and file.
Seconded by Councilmember Wingo.
Item number 5, approval to renew contract with NYSID.
Items open.
Okay, this item is open. Can someone explain what this item actually does?
John Stanchik again, yes. That's a contract with the New York State Industry for the Disabled. Them in partnership with Beals Scanning Services. They provide a scanning service of all the records from central booking due to the volume, and it gets the information onto a disk that is easily searchable then and condenses the information.
Is that information in the web portal anywhere?
No.
Why?
It's not public record.
It's not public record? Okay, after so long, does it become public record?
It's our arrest and booking information. I mean, at some point, depending on the status of the case, it could be foiled. But this is historical data that under the law we are forced to maintain pretty much forever. So
okay,
we're trying to get it out of paper and file cabinets and into a digital format.
What was the cost last year? Did we do this last year?
Yeah, it was the same amount.
Okay. Questions, colleagues?
No question.
Okay. I would just like to, on this one as well, it says estimated costs. Again, are you expecting this to be more than 10,000?
It would depend on the volume of the records. From what we've seen, no. So we could probably add a not to exceed.
Okay, could you do that, please? Thank you. So we can receive and file this item. They'll submit the other.
Motion to receive and file.
Seconded by Council President Pridgen.
Item number 6, approval to renew contract with PAL for Buffalo Peacemakers program.
Items open.
This item is open. We all know what the Peacemakers do. I just have a question. I think we may have asked this last year. Why does this money go through PAL and not directly to the Peacemakers?
I don't know the determination of why PAL was involved. They help manage the whole program they oversee it and manage it from like a fiscal standpoint.
But the Peacemakers are a 501c3, correct?
Well, yeah, I think it has to. Yeah, it might have to be because of that. Oh, because of that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think a determination. The funding had to go through a 501c.
But aren't they a 501c3?
PAL is.
I thought the Peacemakers were as well. Is that not true?
I'm not sure.
I don't believe they were, council member.
They're not?
I don't believe, and that's why it was set up under PAL.
Okay, so if they were a 501c3, we would go through them directly then?
We could pay them directly, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any questions, colleagues, on this? Motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Seconded by Councilmember Wingo.
Item number 7, approval to renew contract with Western New York Polygraph Services.
This item's open.
Okay. Now I know that this item talks about polygraphs for people who are charged. Is that correct? Or is it for officers?
Recruits, right?
It's not necessarily for people that are charged. It's for suspect interrogations as well as our civilian hires.
Okay. What was the amount last year?
Actually, it was very minimal. I think I would say it was less than $1,000. Again, it all depends on the usage on the contract.
So you said it was less than $1,000, and this year we're doing 10,000.
As a again, it's a if we don't spend the money, it just goes back to the city. You know, that's just the amount that was put in the budget as an estimate.
Okay. I think that with some of the reforms, you think that we may have some reduction in people that are being charged?
It's not necessarily a reduction in people being charged. The polygraph service is used in a lot of sex offense cases. It's used in homicide cases. And since we're accredited, every single employee that works here, as well as vendors, now have to be polygraphed, possibly if they're being hired, depending on the assignment that they're in. So the estimate is appropriate because depending on the hiring and the number of people is going to depend on how many polygraphs. There are years where sex offenses conducted 20, 30 polygraphs. There's years where they've only had to conduct 2 or 3. It's not if you're charged, it's used as an investigative tool. So to try and estimate more precisely is difficult because it's trying to estimate crime, I guess. And it's, you know, there's no way to know how many people you might have to polygraph in a particular case.
But Captain, you did 1,000 last year. So what is going to change this year that you think that you're going to do 10 times that?
Again, in years past, we've spent closer to the $10,000 mark. It just fluctuates. So we use the $10,000 as the baseline. And then again, it's not spent.
So over the last 3 years, what have you used for this?
I have to research that. I don't have those numbers.
Okay. So can we receive and file this item? Should tell me what the last 3 years is, and then let's book the last 3 years average instead of just arbitrarily booking 10,000 and last year was only 1,000. Okay. Motion to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file.
Seconded by Councilmember Nowakowski.
Item number 8, approval to renew contract with Washington Computers.
Items open.
Okay. Can you explain this? And I just have a general question. How are these cameras helping us? We have a camera system. I get this from residents all the time. Why is the cameras not helping us with investigations and this and that? I don't know. Why is it not helping us with people who are dumping illegally? I don't know. But we're getting ready to pay $245,000 for maintenance, but I don't know if these cameras are even helping us. So can someone please explain that to me if these cameras are helping us?
Yes, I would say the cameras are helping us. We have solved some homicides from the use of these city cameras here. The thing about what the neighbors are complaining about is some people are they have knowledge of what the city cameras being put up there, and they do things to disguise themselves, or what have you. But these cameras have helped us, and they help our intelligence unit. There's been times where we got called of people selling drugs at a certain area, and we will focus that camera on that area. We don't have cameras all over the city for every corner, but those areas that we have, we focus, and we have made arrests in those areas too, where those cameras are focused. They also help us also when we have car accidents with our police vehicles. We can go back and see if there's a camera there, and I can look at that, and it tells me if our officers were, in the wrong in this accident. If it's, if the camera caught it. So there's different things where it does help the department. I understand what you're saying. Some people feel that people are dumping, but probably don't have a, sometimes, and also the camera, it turns to do a 360. It doesn't always just focus in one area. It turns. Sometimes we can catch things, sometimes we don't catch it because it's turning.
Councilmember Bowman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, on the cameras, is it possible to look at potentially moving some of the locations or looking at the statistics and see, in particular in my district, some of the locations, the cameras have been effective, but the crime kind of moves with the cameras. They'll switch to a different corner. I'm not asking you to move every camera, or certain times the cameras have been out for long periods of time. Like I know the one on Lovejoy and Gold we had for a while. That thing was never on. There would be accidents, and I'd look to the camera and it wasn't functioning. Is there a way to look at the cameras, get a study of which ones are functional, potentially looking at different locations, moving around to address issues through the district? I'd be interested in working with you on that.
Yes, we can do that. And also, I do get requests from some of the council members too about cameras in their districts. But I have to also tell you there's a feed to it too, to move these cameras. There's a feed there, but if you can, send me where you having these issues at, then we'll look at trying to get a camera put in that area where you're having the problems at.
Okay, understood on the fee, and I'll try to be strategic about it, and I'd like to work with you. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the amount of the contract, 245.2?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilmember Rivera?
Commissioner, you have cameras throughout the city, and I think everybody wants a camera on almost every block, but it's just not doable. However, when you're allocating resources like cameras and technology, it should be based on some criteria that you have in terms of reporting crimes, incidents of crimes, drug activity, or homeland defense, whatever criteria you use. But you have the information, the analysis at your fingertips in terms of where things are actually happening, where crimes are occurring, where we're seeing a spike in crimes, and where it's gone down. And perhaps you should base, how you put those cameras based on statistics that change annually and perhaps monthly. For example, you may have an area that required for months that you have cameras, but now it's down in another area, it's pretty high. So do you track that? You have the analysis, the crime mapping, the data. Do you move your cameras based on that analysis, or do you wait for council members to call or constituents to call, or do you do that based on your own analysis?
Both. We go and look at the areas where cameras, when we originally put them up there, and a lot of times I get information from my chiefs in those districts, and we can put a camera on this corner where there was a lot of activities, and within 6 months to a year, it's not that much activity. So yeah, we will look to move that camera to a place where there's, where they don't relocate it, their activities at. But like I said before, I also look at the requests from the council, and also requests from different block clubs, who ask for cameras. I mean, like you said at the beginning, I just don't have enough cameras to put everywhere. And sometimes you have to look at the fact of the block club where they want a camera at, it probably is a lot of activity over there compared to what I may get from a council, when he's probably getting it from another block club where he wants requesting for a camera. So we have to look at the calls. We have to look at exactly what's going on in that area before we make a decision on where we're going to put that camera at.
Okay. So what is the criteria right now? For example, I'll go up Delaware and I'll see cameras up on Delaware Avenue, and I'll go by the Peace Bridge and I'll see cameras over by the Peace Bridge. And I imagine it's because of homeland defense and things like that. But on Delaware, you got businesses, you got mansions, you got, so what's the criteria? I mean, I've seen some in certain areas and I question, are they there? Maybe they're there for a reason. What would you normally have a camera on business districts like or quarters like Delaware Avenue?
Well, again, you have cameras that are based on call volume, based on number of car accidents, collisions, pedestrian-involved accidents. Delaware Avenue, there's a number of larcenies and robberies that occur up and down that street. So it's a number of different factors that play into the decision where to put a camera. Also, decisions such as known travel routes for people that are entering certain areas where crimes may be committed. You're looking to be able to capture somebody on video coming and going from a particular location. So the camera administrator looks at all those factors. Also, there is a limit as to where we can put the cameras based on the type of system it is. There's a lot of investment that goes into not just the camera, but the backbone infrastructure that allows a signal, which is a radio-based signal. It's not cellular. So it's not as simple as just taking a camera and putting it anywhere you want. It has to be able to fit into the mesh network that's created with the radio signal. So sometimes we're unable to accommodate requests because we can't get a signal there. A lot of our radio equipment that creates the network is located on public buildings, hospitals, private buildings, and we have agreements with all those places because basically, much like a two-way radio, the cameras work line of sight.
Okay, thank you. Can I just ask, if you do move cameras based on analysis and spike in crimes in our respective districts, would you please at least let us know that reasons?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Council President Pridgen.
All right, real quick, and this is really for my colleagues. I've worked with the department on cameras in my district, and they're very responsive, and also purchased cameras through discretionary or, you know, those type of things where neighbors really, really wanted it, and we didn't have the funds budgeted. So those options are out there, just to let everybody know. And the department has been working with my office on every single request, whether it's to move or to purchase. And those cameras have actually gone down a little bit, but they are pretty expensive. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Seconded by Councilmember Wingo. Can we take number 21, item number 21, since we have the police department here?
Motion to take item 21 out of order. Do we have anything else off the table that we need to take?
No, that's it.
That's it? Okay. Take from the table item 21.
Commissioner, I have a question. I know that the contract for the new company was approved. It was a misunderstanding. I just want to be clear, because this item is still on the table in finance. A new item came before us. It shouldn't have been approved because we weren't ready to approve it, but we did. I'm gonna leave that. But I got information that we have been requesting from the Buffalo Police Department regarding information to GS4. I'm not advocating for GS4. I'm just asking, we ask questions, were they given information? Were they aware of the RFP? And I have emails that were sent to the police department, to Mr. Stanchik, that they were inquiring back in February about the RFP. They weren't given the information. So we had asked you over and over again about the connection, the conversation, any cooperation, any insights, and you said to us, I'm not aware, I don't know. But I have a document right in front of me with emails. Did you not get emails from Mr. Clinton Williams back in February?
Mr.
Stanchik.
Oh. Yes, he did send me an email. At the time I was unaware of when the actual RFP went out. That's not my position to be involved in that.
But you were the point of contact. We asked you if you had contact with him, and you were his point of contact, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so this is one thing that just kind of disturbs me, that we trust our police department. We trust our police department. And we had conversation with you 2 or 3 times regarding this process. And I'm not gonna say you lied to us, you deceived us. And I'm very disappointed. because we asked respectful questions. We wanted this to be a fair process. The process didn't seem to be fair. The process seemed to be rigged because this guy, I have emails from him that he asked you to contact Captain Ronaldo. You were supposed to get to Captain Ronaldo. All of a sudden, they see people walking through the building, being interviewed. And I'm just trying to understand what happened that this process, which was supposed to be open and fair, went left. And we ended up approving a contract for someone who had to get an extension because they don't have enough people right now to fulfill it. And so that concerns us. We said that we were concerned, but no one from the police department acted like they were concerned.
Council member?
Yes.
Now, when the request went through to do the RFP for the security services, that goes through the purchasing department. And when that bid goes out, they publish it in the newspaper, they publish it online, and then they publish it through anyone's email they have. So
Commissioner Estridge, with all due respect, this gentleman asked the question. He didn't ask for a favor. He said, can you just let us know when the RFP is coming out so he can be looking for it? That's fair. That's fair. That's not saying give me an inside track. He's saying.
No. I'm saying perhaps what happened, we had the email from G4S from the prior person, and that's who that was mailed to. It was never updated by G4S.
So provide me with the document that says that rejected, because you know when you send an email and it's not the wrong address, it lets you know, it sends you a document saying, okay, not appropriate address. I need to see all the documents regarding the RFP, and I want to see the copies of the people who apply and the date stamps. Because right now, it seems as though we approved something that wasn't legitimate, because the contractor who was here, who had inquired back in February, he sent me a letter. He sent me the email that corresponds with his documentation. Not like what Mr. Sanchez told us, is that I had no contact, I have no information. I don't know why they didn't apply. Well, you knew why they didn't apply. Because if he asked you the question, I would have thought, just being a professional that I am, Mr. Clinton, the RFP went out. He didn't ask him to give me the RFP. He said, let me know, because there was a change. So, Captain Ronaldo, did you know about the RFP going out and why GS4 was not given information, or why they didn't get an email?
Sir, what I can answer for you is this. An email was sent to G4S, to the prior account manager. The email was not rejected. G4S did not have a no longer employee return receipt on their email address. So my understanding is that Mr. Sunderland did email G4S. They were never notified that that person was not working there, nor was there a forward to their email. Additionally, multiple companies responded by simply checking the City of Buffalo website, as well as all the other places that these bids are published. So I can't speak to why G4S did not pay attention to when the bid was going out, or research all of the places that these bids are posted, as well as the city website, the Buffalo News, and other government websites. But the bid was emailed to an individual who was the last point of contact that Mr. Sunderland had. There was no email sent back to Mr. Sunderland saying return a receipt, denied, requested. So that's the status of how that particular situation occurred, that they opted not to respond to it.
Yeah, well, Captain, I don't think they opted not to respond to it, and especially when in February, they inquired. They were interested. We were told they didn't know they were interested. That's basically what we were saying, that they weren't interested. They put the infrastructure in place, but seemed like they weren't interested for a contract that we were told is going to be $750,000. Well, the proposal wasn't for $750,000, it was $691,000. So again, I'm very disappointed that we asked these questions a couple of weeks ago, and we were not given the right information. And I'm going to take anyone to task when they lie to this Common Council or deceive the Common Council, because that's what it seems like to me. Because we are always given the rigmarole instead of giving the truth. You're coming before a government body. You're supposed to be honest. You're supposed to be truthful. If an ordinary citizen comes to us and lies to us, they can be brought up on charges. But we have our police department, we can't get good information. That concerns me. And that's the state of our country. That our police department, who we are trusting to give us the correct information, did not. And maybe you don't know the ins and outs of the RFP process. I'll give you that possibly. The commissioner does, but you, Mr. Stanchich, knew that our G4S was interested in the contract, correct?
Yes, but I was not aware of the RFP out. I will tell you that. And I did not, Councilor Wyatt, intend anyway to lie or deceive the council. My involvement in that whole process, I've had a very great working relationship with Clint. As far as the whole process of him or G4S not being notified or getting that, it's not my particular job to notify him. I thought they would have seen that or got that through, like Captain Ronaldo said, the way it was advertised. And I do apologize if you think in any way that I deceived or lied. That is not me at all in any way. I am always very straightforward and try to do my job to the best of the ability for all the years I've been here. So as far as that incident, or for what happened there, I did get that email, but I didn't think it was my purview to answer him.
Well, to me, you said you have a good relationship with them. And I think that if I have a good relationship with someone and I ask them a question, that they would respond. And you said to him that you were going to let him know through Captain Ronaldo. And so you had an opportunity to share with them the information that he requested from you. And you said, I will let you know when the captain lets me know. So are you telling me the captain didn't let you know what RFP was going out?
I was not aware that the RFP was out when it was. I found out actually, unfortunately, after the process was over, that I actually find out about it. Again, it's not my position or job to know that. I have,
so why are you in the position to be the liaison with G4S if you aren't in the position to know that? Are you part of the bidding process or the review process of who you bring in?
No.
Oh, you're just coordinating.
I coordinate after the contract is in place or after the process is done. I work on the contract after the RFP process is done.
I'm gonna submit my document asking for the documents for this process to make sure it's appropriate. And when did the RFP go out?
Council member, we can get you that information, but the RFP goes out through, the purchasing department.
So nobody knows when the RFP went out?
Well, I don't have it in front of me, but I can look and find out when it was sent out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item.
Well, can I just comment on this briefly?
Yes, Majority Leader.
Only because there's something wrong with this process. It didn't seem right to us when we were told or led to believe that G4 wasn't interested in it, because that was the impression I got. And that is not the impression that G4 is giving us. Regardless of the dates in the RFP, the fact that somebody said that they weren't interested in it is misinformation. And I think that is where I have a problem with this. This council was misled in the very beginning. There certainly would have been more questions if we would have known early on everything that we know today. We have an organization that has institutional knowledge that came in highly recommended in the very beginning because of their expertise, not only here, but internationally. It didn't make any sense to us why they wouldn't, especially when we had nothing but a good working relationship with them. So I can see why council members are very worried and concerned about this process and about information that comes to us from the police department going forward. There'll be a lot more questions in the future when it comes to questions regarding the Buffalo Police Department and items that come before us simply because we feel we were misled. So I don't have complete confidence myself, like Councilmember Rashid Wyatt. I want to make sure that when you give us information, it is accurate information. And I felt that we were misled. At least we based our decision to give this contract on the information that you gave us, on the limited information that you gave us. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay. Next item.
I don't think there's any. Is that it?
Motion to table. No, next, we have one more item.
Item number 9, S. Wooten, BNCRC letter regarding CDBG funds and emergency solutions grants funds.
Items open.
This item is open, and we have someone from BNCRC to speak. Who's that going to be?
It's going to be me, Catherine Franco.
Okay, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. So my name is Catherine Franco. I'm actually the chair of the Buffalo Niagara Community Reinvestment Coalition, quite a mouthful, BNCRC. And it was about 2 months ago, May 12th, that the coalition went ahead and sent a letter to the Common Council and also to the mayor's office in regards to the $8 million in federal funding that is coming to the city of Buffalo in regards to COVID-related funding from the Federal CARES Act. So essentially, in this letter, we outlined concerns and that we would really like the city to focus that funding on preventative services that really are going to help those most impacted by COVID. Because even though we talk about COVID as a moment in time, I think what has been shown over the last few weeks, particularly in terms of the protests that we have been having, the talk about defunding the police and everything else, we understand that many of these issues and the inequities that we see in our communities are systemic, and that although COVID has exacerbated them, they existed previously. And if we are not intentional in the way that we act in this moment, they will continue after. So that letter went ahead and asked that the city look at providing rental assistance, small business assistance, supporting our small landlords, preventing foreclosures, looking at funding home repair programs, assisting with medical debt, mental health services, food insecurity, access to safe water, access to technology, language access, improving and creating more opportunities for coronavirus testing, which some of these things have happened. So we're happy for that. But I think that what we are really trying to address in this letter and having sign-on from a dozen organizations is that now is the time for preventative services. I do want to keep going because I think that it's interesting in this moment. I know that Jeanette, she was the first one to talk from BFSA. She said that these are unprecedented times. And I think that they really are because of the way in which we are seeing things happen and unfold all at once, the way in which people are forced to pay attention to the systemic inequities, the systemic racism that exists in our communities. And I also hear at the same time that the city is strapped for money, that the city is in a deficit, $96 million in a deficit. And also having this conversation before me about BPD, there is the call to defund the police right now. I know that the question was asked, is it a dire need to purchase these vehicles? And what I will say to that, whether it's a dire need or not, I'm not making commentary on that, although I have my opinions. What I do think is a dire need is the situation that our residents are in. I think that our residents are in dire need of bold action in this moment, whether or not it may seem to make fiscal sense. The quality of life for our residents, that makes fiscal sense continuously and always. And so I don't believe that the deficit is the burden of the residents to carry. And so when we're looking at this COVID funding that is specifically meant to address the issues of COVID-19, but we also acknowledge that COVID-19 is simply a situation that has exacerbated systemic inequities that have existed for time. I think that that money needs to be going to the preventative services, particularly as we have a budget deficit and we know that there's going to be a conservative budget, that we know that program cuts are going to happen. I will also say that I think that this conversation was really robust. I'm happy to have heard, kind of this call for transparency and accountability when it comes to BPD. I think what also is being called for is accountability and transparency within our local government. So of our elected officials, we know that there have been conversations around kind of COVID-19, but not necessarily in a public space. And how is that money happening? I don't know that many people knew that COVID-19 money was coming into the city, particularly in the amount that is coming. $8 million is not necessarily an extravagant amount of money, but it really truly is if we are creative in the way that we are using it. And so I think that there needs to be transparency around who is at the table, who are considered stakeholders, because I think that that group of people can be increased to be able to give feedback on where the needs are for these things. When we talk about the RFP processes, making that clear for people who are not aware of how that process works, allowing people the opportunity to take advantage of that, but then also allowing for an accountability. So knowing who is awarded these RFPs, who's awarded this money and what amount and for what services. Because I think what we have seen in this moment is that people are more than willing to step up. We've had so many people step up, but at the same time, we have so many people who are also in need in this moment as well. And so we want to make sure that there is accountability for service delivery, that we have the type of quality in service delivery because there is that transparency in the process, that people are able to be involved, and that we also have the accountability in terms of where these services are so that people can access the resources. I think that that's a huge thing. I don't want to go too long-winded, but I will because I have a lot to say about this. But I think right now, the biggest ask that we have, particularly as we were just given kind of short notice, I'm the only one on this call right now. This is in the Finance Committee. I appreciate us being taken to this space to be able to talk about it. But I do think that it's in earnest that the Common Council should provide a public meeting for the public and the community to be able to give feedback on this and be a part of the process, be engaged in how this money is spent, where it is spent, and continue that accountability and that transparency throughout. So I think that there needs to be a special hearing that is called that allows for public comments on this funding that is coming in. I think it would be great to hear what the city is planning to do because we have really heard nothing up until this point so far. And I think that it also makes sense that the city needs to prioritize the areas in which the coalition and other organizations have stated should be prioritized. And essentially those are preventative services. And I understand that essentially, because maybe this is something that I will hear, I understand that the council's role in this is maybe to solely approve, but my understanding as elected officials is that there should be more of an engagement in this from the Common Council. And so I'm encouraging because I think about the constituents that you all serve and the impact that really channeling this funding could have. And so I think about it in a way that this really is an opportunity for our council members to benefit their residents and their constituents in a way that hasn't been prioritized and done before.
Okay. Thank you for your comments, Ms. Franco. I can't say I don't agree with you. I think that we could do a little bit more, but I think that we've done something a great deal thus far, even through this pandemic, as far as having transparency in these Zoom calls. We have more people participate and engage because now you can see it on Facebook. It's more transparent. So I do think that we've done that. But Commissioner Estridge, can you talk about what are our plans? I mean, I know we have some money coming in through COVID.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we do. And all those plans right now are being put together. With all our block grant funds, there's always public hearings involved with that. That's part of the process. We always do that. And then we always bring it to council for discussion also. And so those are being put together right now, the plans. It'll go to council for discussion and a public hearing, and that'll be posted very soon.
Okay. I was going to say there are no dates for that public hearing at this point?
No, it is not yet, not as of yet.
So
we have not finished the plan yet.
Okay, so once we have a plan, there'll be public hearings.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
There's always a public hearing. It's in a public place. I take that back now with COVID. I'm not sure how we're going to handle that. Okay. If it's a WebEx or how they will be handling that.
So can Ms. Franco get you her information so that you can correspond, or someone can get them information on when the hearing is? Because if she's here, I think that I respect her calling And I think that is something that we definitely want to make certain that the residents are aware of. I mean, some of the things I know that aren't really our responsibility, but have you had any conversation with Erie County? Because I know a lot of those things that you put on are probably county things.
So I think that the county has their own CDBG and ESG funds, and they have set out a plan. I think that our focus was really on the city because of the disparities that we see and because of the role that the city can play in this. So we wanted to make sure, also in part because we hadn't heard as much from the city in terms of what was going to be done. I mean, the pandemic has been ongoing now since March, that most people have really been impacted. We are now in July. We sent this letter out in May. So again, I think that the transparency that you talked about, having these Zoom calls and everything else, this has allowed for a lot more participation. I hope that this continues throughout, but it really is that accountability of making sure that those conversations are happening, that if they are public, that people know when they're happening, that there's real outreach for it, because I think that there's many opportunities that are missed because people aren't aware of meetings that are happening, even if, you know, and I know that council does put things out and that the city put things out, but it's for some reason, it's not landing with people, that they're missing those different things. So again, having that transparency, that accountability, knowing where the money is going, not just allowing us the opportunity to hear about it, but giving us the opportunity to engage in it. I think that that's helpful.
Yeah, and that's always part of the process. It's published in the Buffalo News, it's published on the website and through the council agenda. So, and some of the items you have here, I'm just looking at your list, we do already, and we'll expand on those. But please send me your contact and we'll be glad to give you more information.
Wonderful.
Have you had any conversation with Mr. Mahaffey?
So we actually have not heard back from Mr. Mahaffey. So it took us 2 months to get here. Hopefully that this will push him to be interested to have some conversation with us.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments, colleagues? Okay, thank you for coming on.
Thank you, and I look forward to seeing how this plays out.
Okay. Anything else, colleagues? Okay.
No questions? Motion.
Nope. Motion to table, seconded by Councilmember Nowakowski.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, seconded by Council President Pridgen.